Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you all had a fantastic Christmas. And since we are post-Christmas, but we're still winter, I couldn't think of a better cake to show you than this silver sugar crystal cake with a buttercream Faultline and some pearls. I thought it still kind of reminded me of Christmas. Now just replace the pink flower with a red one and it would be perfect for this time of the year. But I did film it earlier, so anyway, if I could go back, I would replace that with a red flower. I think that would be really pretty. So what we're doing is we're doing our first layer of buttercream. Well, first and final, because I had already filled these cakes and did a crumb coat. These were for an order at work. So our cakes are already ready to be kind of finished off. I've shown you lots of times how I do my filling, so if you want to look back at older videos, I tended to show you every single step of the game back in the day. So there are a lot of videos with those on there, So I'm just using my Crusting American buttercream, and I'm just filling in where I might have missed any holes or had any gaps in the buttercream. So I just go back in and fill that in, and then we go back in with our scraper. I like to use the larger or medium to large plastic scrapers for my getting the bulk of the buttercream off. And then I like to go back in with my smaller little metal scrapers. These are actually tools for working with clay, but they work really well for fine-tuning buttercream. Now I popped that first tier, the top tier, into the freezer to firm up while I worked on the rest. You can leave it in the freezer for a little while, but I probably wouldn't do more than 30 minutes because otherwise you'll be dealing with a little bit too much condensation, and that can kind of bite you in the behind if you leave it in there for too long. But I'm doing the same thing with the bottom tier. The board that it's on right now is not the finished board. I do switch them over to a finishing board before I am done with the cakes. And to get the sprinkles or the sugar crystals to stick, I find this is actually the easiest technique, just using a clothing steamer and getting that surface a little bit damp. Now you will get a little bit of condensation when you bring it out of the freezer. No matter if it's 10 minutes or 30 minutes, you're going to get a little bit. I want to point out that I am wiping off the board so that the sugar crystals don't stick to the board and give us a problem. So we want to remove that extra condensation there. But yes, if you bring it out from the freezer, even after 10 minutes, you're going to get a little condensation, but it's not going to be quite enough to get an even stickiness to the cake. So I'm starting off with, this is a hair color brush. I only use it for cakes. I like to use those because they're wider. You can use a fan brush, that works just fine, but I do like to use the those wider brushes. You get just a little bit more of a coverage. And then I usually do use a combination of the brush, and then wherever the brush is not able to get the crystals up high enough, or fast enough for my preferences, I will go in and just use clean hands and just kind of apply them that way too. I use a combination. Then I go back over and make sure that I get a good coverage there. And I did do 2 layers of the sugar crystals because you could see the white through a little bit more than my liking, so I did do 2 coats of it. And make sure you get that top and that corner, that top edge covered as much as you can. And then just remove the excess off of the board again because I'm going to put it into the freezer to set up for 10 minutes. But those sugar crystals that did not get used, you can put them back into your bottle and reuse them again. Apparently, I'm going to show you the second coat. I did do it all at one time. I'm calling it a second coat just because I kind of cleaned up in between, and then I went back and maybe just packed it in a little bit more. Don't put it into your refrigerator or your freezer in between these layers because that's going to keep it from, it's going to dry the buttercream off. And you're going to have to re-wet it, and then some of that silver from your sugar crystals will kind of drip off, so you don't want to do that. And I like to use my fondant smoother to kind of push them in where they're not wanting to adhere as well. because it does get a little harder to get your outer layers to stick because you have that base layer of sugar crystals already. And then remove the extra from your board again, and this time, I swear to goodness, I put it back into the bottle. And I just like to use that offset spatula around that bottom edge to make sure that they're adhered really well. And then go ahead and put it into your refrigerator to firm up. And in the meantime, sorry about that, it being out of focus there. I still wanted to show you that I did that irregular line because we're doing kind of like a half of a fault line. I guess I'll call it half of a fault line because I'm not doing it from the top down. Also, just along that bottom edge because we have that unfinished edge on the top. I did not smooth that in. I wanted that to kind of mirror the uneven line of the fault line. I thought that was a kind of a good combination. You don't have to. You can smooth out that top edge if you want to. And I'm not doing a real thick layer of buttercream because, you know, I personally think there's never too much buttercream. But I know not everybody does. So if you're doing a real thick layer of buttercream in your fault line, it's a lot of buttercream because each layer is probably about a quarter of an inch thick to a half an inch sometimes, depends on how even your layers are. But I would say a good half or quarter of an inch on each layer, and then you add another layer of the fault line on the bottom, then you're getting about half an inch of buttercream. So that's a pretty thick amount of buttercream. And then I'm just wiping off my board. I had transferred it onto a cake drum. I just adhere the tier once it's chilled onto the cake board, the drum, with just a rolled up piece of packing tape to get it to stick. You can use buttercream, that works too. Now I'm just using just the pearl dragees. This is a variety. There are probably about 4 different sizes, and I'm using the largest 3. The very smallest ones I find sometimes are really hard to get onto the cake because they're so small. But I might have thrown a few of them in there just for good measure. Like I said, I did this in the last fall, so it's kind of hard for me to remember. But I used at least the 3 largest sizes. And I like to put the large ones on first and then fill in with the smaller ones. That way you can kind of get your spacing a little bit more organized. And I do like to just dip my finger in water and then dip it into the dragees for the smaller ones and then attach them that way. I'm just mixing. I already have, that's a pill box or like a week's worth of pills, you know, the container that you use to organize your pills. And I like to put my luster dust in there. I just have to rehydrate them when I want to use them. So I just added a little bit of Everclear back into the container for the silver because it does dry in there. What you don't use is just the liquid evaporates. So all you have to do is reconstitute it with some more of your Everclear. You can use vodka. You can use lemon extract. There are a few different ways to do it, but I use Everclear because that's what I have available to me. And I'm just using a fan brush at this point to kind of touch just that very top edge. You can make that as thick as you want to. I didn't want it to be overwhelmingly thick. And don't worry about getting it towards, you know, that top edge of the fault line all the way, because then you risk touching the buttercream that's covering the entire cake. And then that can look a little sloppy. So just basically concentrate on the outside edge. Nobody is going to notice that it's not all the way back. Nobody's going to care. And once we get that on there, we can go ahead and pop that into the refrigerator to firm up. We just want to make sure that those dragees are nice and adhered to the cake so they don't pop off as we're working with it. Now, you will notice that the next set of images or video here is not the same cake. It's a different cake, same technique. That's a pretty cool effect, isn't it? But it's doing the exact same thing. I'm not sure where that footage went. But basically, I did 5 of the boba tea straws, cut to the same height, a little bit of buttercream, and then I used a skewer through the top tier and pushed it down into the bottom tier. That way you are not messing with your sugar crystals. They're not going anywhere, but just have to make sure that that top tier is nice and firm and set up. So this is our final product, guys. I hope you liked it. I hope you got something from it. And remember, you can do whatever floral you want on there. I just did attach those with a little bit of buttercream. And I hope you had a great Christmas again, and we'll catch you on the next one.